Urinary system. Kidneys. I remember my year 1 classroom had a table in the shape of a kidney. It was separate from the rest of the tables across the room, tables made of wood and lacquer, scribbles from countless felt tips, and long, tangled scratches made by small pairs of scissors. This other table was special. It was small and had a matching red chair, both made from one piece of plastic formed in a mould. It was the one table and chair in the play section of the room, surrounded by a vivid carpet and small shelves filled with stacked toys and games and books brimming with colourful illustrations. One child would sit in the chair, and any others who were playing with them would sit on the carpet around it. Unfortunately, for the year that I was in that classroom, I never sat on that chair that went with that table. As a kid, I honestly did enjoy sitting on the carpet. I enjoyed lining my body and crossed my legs perfectly to fit into the royal blue squares that checkered the ground below me. I also never cared about sitting in the chair. I cared about my friends, and all my friends cared more about sitting in the chair than I did. I cared about my friends liking me. I was a kid that always felt a tiny bit just out of reach to everyone else. I was very aware of that fact, so I worked harder to get people to like me. This pattern started around this time, caused me some problems in my early teens, and I became friends with people who gave me nothing, mostly because I was in a group of friends, because I was really only friends with people who were friends with them. I didn't really like them. They were quite self-obsessed, and they were constantly forcing an image of themselves that they saw others had, and would try overly hard to make that for themselves. But I felt that, for better or for worse, they are my friends. I felt an anxious need to be part of that group, so I made myself available for them. I made myself the one that would listen to them about their things, to the point that we would only talk about them. And Sartre said, "Hell is other people." The way I would view myself with the reflection in their eyes would be the ammunition for me to torture myself to please them. To be liked, I had to offer something to them. I had to be the one to put in all the effort. I had to be the one to message first and ask to hang out after school. I have memories of baking cakes and making bunting to celebrate random arbitrary celebrations, because I had to be the funny one that would commit extraordinarily hard to the bit. I would do so much just so that I wouldn't feel like I wasn't a small piece of the side in the friendship group, only brought along because I was a friend of a friend. It was exhausting and revealing to the point that when I got so depressed that I didn't message them for over a month during lockdown, they didn't realise, because they didn't ask. I remember long stretches of time when I couldn't move, or wouldn't. My body became something that my heavy mind had to force to drag around. The sun stopped being the centre of the universe. Instead, day and night, time and space, the rest of the world became something that moved on its own around me while I would lie in my bed. Days and weeks became something theoretical, because there was little to no difference, except for how lit the view of the sky looked from my bedroom window. I could feel myself fading slowly, that the bed I'd had since I was a child was slowly becoming my deathbed, that the few threads that were keeping me tied to the world were snapping, and at any moment I would fully drift away. I don't want to sit on that red plastic chair that goes with that red plastic table. I'll be way too big for it. The plastic would buckle and snap under the weight of me, and I wouldn't be able to fit my knees under it. I'm sure that table is long gone, snapped and broken, not decomposing in a landfill somewhere, sitting like a corpse, surrounded by rubbish, dead. like the anxious little boy who never sat in it. They grew out of that. Eureka. I woke up in the morning to look out my bedroom window and out onto the back garden to see my dad had put up the large paddling pool. I imagined myself sat in it, clad in my swimming trunks and sun cream to the nines, the cold water up to my neck as I sit and float, breaking the still surface of the water. I saw out the window all the garden furniture pushed aside to make space for the large blue plastic vat that he'd attached a hose to the side of, pouring water to slowly fill it. The water babbling like a child, hard gushes sputtering against war-choked spurts, interrupting the stream like coughs breaking apart a silence. It took a full day to fill up, me and my sister ignoring the blue sky that hung over the day as if it wasn't there, instead to stand on the edge and watch the level of the water slowly rise, like stacking sheets of paper one at a time. We dipped our fingers into the water, rippling the surface, and splashed at each other, squealing like animals as we got the water in our eyes and splattering dark spots on our t-shirts, before we leaned back over the edge to stare back at the water, down the dark blue plastic, shining like a jewel in the bottom. When it was full, we invited all the family around, filling the garden with warm bodies, sipping old cold drinks, and all the cousins playing in the paddling pool, splashing water as we move around each other, spinning around in circles in the water, our hair wet and sticking close to our faces, clinging to our soaked and smiling features. My dad stepping in up to his knees, stroking the edges of his camo shorts, to hold our legs as we do handstands in the water, and fill our water guns, and threaten to shoot at our parents, watching the scene like a distracted audience. We played as children did. I remember their smiling faces from then, their faces ruddy and wet against a backdrop of sun and blue skies. I still associate them with it, under the depth of adulthood, and many colourful hairstyles, and that as adults, we don't play, except for the hour when, drunk at our nan's funeral, we all went down the slide, cousins, aunts, uncles, all laughing like children. It reminded me of the innocence of us all, conjuring the image of my cousin Chloe, neon pink armbands on her arms, pouting in a tiny paddling pool at a garden party, her limbs squeezed against a small ring of plastic, filled with a shallow pool of water, and we laughed as music played in the sun. Those times would stay uninterrupted until someone would scream, "Who has peed in the pool?" And we would clamber out and stand soggy in the garden until the sun dried our bones and the water went dirty and green, leaves and small berries floating upon its surface, and the paddling pool grew less inviting. Bladder. Go piss, girl is a phrase that I say quite often. It is a response to a declaration that someone is going to the toilet. The gender of the person doesn't matter, or whether or not they're only going to piss while in the toilet. Me and my friends, we just say it. It is like a pat on the back before we send them on their way. It is a turn of phrase so normal to me that I let it slip when my granddad, when he said that he was going to the loo before he went on his way, and I, without thinking, I pretty much almost shout, "Go piss, girl," to everyone in the room stare at him looking back at me confused as I fold into myself, embarrassed. I've only ever had one friend who was never shy about pissing. She would invite us into the toilet with her, where she would pull down her knickers, plant herself on the porcelain, and piss in front of us. Her conversation never once stalling or pausing. It would make me question whether I was a prude, for I could never piss so bravely in front of all my friends. Our conversation would never thin as well, inside the four walls of the toilet. In fact, the conversation would often increase in seriousness or importance. Within these moments, as if we were entering an inner sanctum, the sound of her piss hitting the water shielded the conversation from the rest of the world. She seemed unaffected by the disparity of tone between the sounds of her pissing and how we were worried for a friend's mental health. After she had finished, she would stay sat upon the toilet, where we would stay until the conversation dries. Maybe she enjoyed it. After all, she was the centre of any conversation, as she had literally sat herself upon the throne. I wonder what it would be to view multiple teenagers file out of the toilet at once after an extended and communal stay. What would they expect us to be doing? Drink? Drugs? Maybe crossing the lines of friendship to have a quick and rather cramped orgy? And not just a normal conversation, with some rather urinal background music, the sound of a flush signalling the end. Well, now, looking back, I don't particularly look fondly upon our friendship. In so many ways, we were compatible. We were completely incompatible as friends. But I do remember her confidence within the confines of the toilet. Her confidence that her pissing was not anything to be ashamed of. That she was completely comfortable in her body and her femininity. Something that I could only ever aspire for. That she could, without a second thought, pull her underwear down to the floor and do something that everyone has to do. And that she would have the conviction to believe that it is something that she doesn't have to do alone and can be part of something that acts as a part of a friendship. For within my social group during my late teens, having a deep toilet talk was something that only the inner core of the group could do. It acted as something for the elite, the top of the social hierarchy, within our small and quite toxic group that the rest could only aspire to one day be part of. Once our friendship group left the barriers, the forced and timetabled interactions of school, it splintered and broke into chunks of friends. Some left quietly and faded into the background of my hometown that I only visited now, and others, I realised, well, that I didn't have to be around them anymore, so why was I choosing to? So, currently, me and my friends don't hold meetings within toilets. We send them on their way with a "go piss girl" and leave them to piss in peace. Urethra. He was bobbing as if in a boat, or at least it felt like we were, as we were on dry land. I sat perched upon my father's shoulders, squeezing the fabric of his shirt between the white knuckles of my fingers as he swayed from side to side, as if he were affected by the tide. His sails blowing in the wind, as if he were adrift in the ocean. But the only liquid that he was soaked in was the rum that he had been tending to all night in the Coach and Horses, the pub that I remember spending a lot of my childhood within the bricked walls of, drinking J2Os and tall glasses filled with lemonade and black paper straws that grew soggy in your mouth. I would sit tight on his shoulders, my dad's hands grasping tightly on the ankles that hung like spaghetti over his shoulders, and down his front as he gently swayed as he walked. The cool wind of the night blowing through my hair and up against the warmth of my cheeks, as I felt as if I were king of the world. I remember the feeling of each of his footsteps as he walked the tight paths back home, past another pub where I once bought a small pack of stale jelly beans and ate uncomfortably on the way home. The way that his shoulders would bounce, sending me into the air, where he would run across the road as cars threatened to speed around sharp corners of empty and dim roads, lit by the tall bodies of streetlights, their eyes gleaming with warm light, strobing the darkness of the night like the stripes of a zebra, as we jumped from dark to light, then dark again, illuminating a strange tall figure with a long body, 4 arms, and 2 heads. I remember the way the stars looked when I would look through the gaps in the clouds to see them sparkling above, holding my head straight up and gently leaning back as my dad pissed into a bush below, the spray of water tinkling, with the twinkling lights until we'd start to move again, bobbing through small streets with crumbling bricks, cracks like open wounds in the pavement. I would reach out my fingers to brush against the branches of tall trees and pluck leaves away, ripping at the green sheet, feeling it slowly dissolve in my fingers until I let the pieces fly into the open air and slowly dance as we turn the corner home, and with a groan, my father lifts me from my shoulders and onto the hard ground.